everybody, and welcome to the channel. If you've ever dipped your toes into the highly rewarding world of submissions, whether you're sending poems or stories to journals, articles to websites, even pitching agents and publishers, you've probably come to realize submitting sucks. You spend all this time looking up places that match your writing style and gauging whether or not your piece would fit in, figuring whether or not they're completely out of your league, oftentimes spending actual human money, only to have your stuff rejected again and again and again. And that's if you're lucky. Sometimes you don't hear anything. And even when you do have something accepted, the mass of rejections that you've had to wade through to get there kind of has a way of taking the edge off the joy. But for as much as it sucks, we keep beating our head against the wall. We do it over and over and over. I've been doing it for years. I'm sure some of you have been doing it for decades. But why? Why do we do this to ourselves? I think the answer to this is the same answer to a question that writers have been fighting back and forth about for forever. The question of who we write for. Because putting ourselves through this gauntlet of submission and rejection, submission, rejection, we aren't doing it for ourselves, obviously. We're doing it because we want other people to read our work. And yet there's still this idea that in order to be creating true, meaningful art, you have to be writing for yourself. That people who write for other people who write to please an audience, end up writing crap, like romance novels and Transformers movies. Writing for other people has become synonymous with writing for the lowest common denominator. And to a certain extent, this is true. Like, Transformers movies are terrible, but only writing for yourself can come with its own levels of weird. As proof, I present Exhibit A, the case of Henry Darger. If you've never heard of him, Henry Darger was an American author who spent his life in Chicago from the late 1800s to about 1970-ish. Well, I guess technically he was a janitor that spent his life in Chicago from the late 1800s to 1970-ish. But that's kind of the point. Now, Darger spent the last 43 years of his life living in a small, quiet apartment, working as a custodian in a hospital. And that's all anybody knew of him. It was only when he moved to an elder care facility and the landlord came to clean out his room, it was discovered that Darger had actually penned the largest novel in recorded human history, coming in at just over 15,000 pages. And along with it were hundreds of drawings and watercolor illustrations. It was only after his death that anyone even read anything he'd ever written. And while his work is often praised for its raw and unself-conscious style, it may have actually been a little too raw. When they found it, the whole thing was just a giant bundle of loose pages. They didn't have numbers, they weren't in order. They might not even be in order now. Not only that, but the illustrations were... well, they were a lot, vacillating wildly between beautiful countryside scenes and depictions of young children being tortured and eviscerated. Because he never intended for anyone to see it, the end result was slightly disturbing, difficult to understand, and overall in need of a good editor. Like, whoa. And that wasn't even the only thing he wrote. His autobiography was like 8 volumes long. But after the first volume, the whole thing divulges into a story about a tornado he saw as a kid that came and whisked him away to a magical land of adventure. Like, it's unfollowable. There are very few people on Earth who have ever read any of his works all the way through. So here it is, the perfect writer, one who wrote only for himself and no one else, completely unspoiled by the opinions of the world, and no one can even read it. Who knows, maybe this is the most morally righteous artistic position there is, but it doesn't really sound worth it to me. But neither does writing Transformers. So who do we write for? Ourselves? Others? Some combination of the two? Like everything, it's different for everyone. But the way I like to think of it is this. Write for yourself, but edit for everyone else. When you're putting down your first draft, do everything you can to write what you want and only what you want. But once that draft is done, it's not just yours anymore. You need to take outside input. You need to take your idea and turn it into something worth reading. Show it to someone. Get their feedback. Listen to their feedback. Don't just think, well, they just don't get it, and move on as you were. If they don't get it, that's a problem. The only way you'll know if you've written something worth reading is to actually get other people to read it. That's why I keep submitting. That's why I keep beating my head against this wall. Because just writing for yourself looks a whole lot more like writing for no one. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Left to Right. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments, who do you write for? Who should we write for? Do you love Transformers movies? I'd love to talk about it.